How about now? Can we hear it? Can
Yes.
we hear?
Okay, success. Take 3. Take 3. Oh my gosh.
This is the best thing ever. Thank you for staying with us, those who are staying with us. And we've just been told we had sound issues, so we'll start over.
Yes.
So welcome back to Thirsty Thursday. We're starting to do this live.
Cheers.
This is, cheers, our first live on LinkedIn together, Will and I. And, you know, we're back to our heritage of cocktails. Will, do you want to
Yeah.
explain that out again?
Yeah, well, we both like to drink. No, last year we would, in the summer, the first round of lockdown, we'd pour ourselves a little drink and we would get on camera and talk about the marketing hits and misses, the pop culture news that got everybody thirsty, and us literally thirsty with our cocktails. So we thought we'd bring that back for this, the first LinkedIn Live I'm doing. Susan started this last week with her pal Dion Vaz. So today,
What are we drinking? We're drinking a really dirty chai latte, which is basically tea, coffee, and vodka all in
great.
one.
It's
So
great.
it is
Yeah.
really good. It's a morning drink, and so we're here.
It's a morning drink.
So this week we have like a bunch of things to talk through, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
But we want to start with our new tradition of covering the podcast wars, because
Yes.
there's always something happening in the podcast world. So
Yes.
Will, do you want to start
Yes.
talking that out while I put some fancy graphics up for
so
us?
we are very excited. We were excited to hear the news, and I feel we willed this to happen, Susan. ABC announced that they are doing a special podcast series
Right.
based on The View. It'll have past View co-hosts, and it's going to be called Behind the Table. And they're going to talk about some of those their controversial moments, behind-the-scenes stuff. Past hosts will share probably their highs and their lows. And it starts September 14th, I think. We are very excited because lately we've been talking about The View a
Right.
lot. It was actually the inspiration for a new service we're offering, like a... we produce podcasts for people, but we are now producing panel podcasts for people, bringing together experts who all share a similar audience to come and talk panel style, fireside chat style. So we've been really
Feeling
sucking
the
up
vibe.
that View energy, that Barbara Walters View energy. And
Yeah.
so we were really excited when we read that this week, that there's going to be this View behind the scenes podcast. So September 14th. That's
September
when it's out.
14th
Check it out,
is when
folks.
it's out. Yeah. So watching some of the originals do their thing
Yeah.
in the podcasting world, I think is
Meredith Vieira's coming back, Lisa Ling. So yeah, it'll
love
be cool.
it. Love it. So from there, we're going to move into a bunch of stories in the food world, and the first of them, it's really what we're going to title this segment: "Food Nobody Asked For."
Yeah.
Food and beverage that nobody asked for. McDonald's kicked things off a little bit and posted a tweet. Right, Will? What did they say?
Yeah, McDonald's Canada. So they said, basically they teased saying, we're bringing back one of our most favorite cult menu items from the past. So right away, people jumped on and thought, McPizza, it's going to be McPizza. For those of you who don't remember this, back in the late 80s, early 90s, McDonald's experimented with pizza as one of their offerings. And so the Twitterverse got super excited. Then you immediately saw McDonald's backtracking a bit. Like, you could tell that it wasn't going to be McPizza. So this is where the hilarity ensued. Because people were like, someone tweeted, riot if it's not McPizza. The comments were hilarious. Other brands got involved, of course. The newsjacking is always, the newsjacking brands that do that well jumped in. It turns out, Susan, the menu item that everybody apparently was asking for is spicy McNuggets. So there's a lot of disappointed McPizza fans out there, but the whole thread is hilarious. Go look at McDonald's Canada's Twitter feed or that Blog TO article that Susan was showing. It's just a fun little read.
Yeah, it's cool. And then staying with that spicy theme, Mountain Dew got involved as well, and them and Flaming Hot Cheetos, which both belong to the same brand,
Yeah.
which is PepsiCo.
I'm scared where this is going.
They've mashed it up into a drink, and this is not Mountain Dew's first gig. They have a couple of other like weird and wonderful drinks, I guess. And so this is a Flaming Hot Mountain Dew.
Flaming Hot Cheeto Mountain Dew. Yes. It's so crazy that they're doing this. When Susan shared this story with me, I made the joke. I'm like, Mountain Dew? More like Mountain Don't. Ha ha ha.
Complete Mountain Dew. Don't. It's just,
Yeah.
it's one of those, oh, sorry, I've got a little screen over here.
Yeah.
But it's basically, one of those stupid foods. Leave a comment for us and tell us whether this is
Are
something.
you going to try this?
Are you going to
Flaming Hot?
try
I
it?
can't even imagine what this is like. I mean, I guess if you've ever had a Cheeto in your mouth and taken a sip of Mountain Dew,
You
It's
might
the
have the
same
same
deal.
effect, right?
Remember last year Kraft Dinner did a pink Kraft Dinner for Valentine's Day? I'm not sure what it was supposed to... Some people were really intrigued. Other people thought it looked disgusting, like Pepto-Bismol with like chunks. So, anyways, so that was that. Then we wanted to move over to... Well, last year, I know... We talked about this on Thursday last year when the Aunt Jemima brand decided to actually rename themselves and rebrand, rightfully so, which is a big deal because the brand was so well known. They really did pivot and they renamed themselves Pearl Milling Co. Susan.
Right.
That was a shout out to their heritage. That's apparently where this first kind of quick batter mill thing came about back, I don't know when, 100 years ago or so. So they went back to their roots, their heritage roots, got rid of obviously the racist imagery on the front, kept some of the colors and some of the look, but this is they released their first ad promoting Pearl Milling Co., reminding everyone that it still is the same taste you've loved your whole life. And then what they chose to do too in the commercial, it's several black families smiling and enjoying the food, right?
Right.
Yeah. So there's no information yet on how they haven't released how sales of the new product have gone. But the whole idea here was just to remind people, and maybe they waited 6 months just to to be respectful. I'm not sure, but what do you think?
I don't know. I think it just remains to be seen. I'm glad that they're following it up with something and trying to figure out. I don't know that this early you can actually know what this brand stands for or whatever, but we love to watch a good story unfold and follow it. So
and the rebrand, it's like, it'll be interesting to see because it's not just, we're going to update our look, update our logo, update the font or the imagery. They've changed the name of the product. They've changed the complete look of the product. The only thing that remains, it does say, I think, the artist formerly known as Aunt Jemima. It doesn't say that, but it's got a little tag on it right now still. But it'll be interesting to see how this brand does over the next year or two.
Yeah, I think it's worth following that one and seeing where that story goes. So next, we're moving over from this into the world of virtual work and Zoom, and how there's been a couple of interesting things on the Zoom front. So we looked at a piece this week which was about how 1 in 4 bosses have had to fire someone for some type of misconduct involving virtual
Zoom
meetings.
Yeah.
So tell us about that story.
So that was interesting because I did. So who knows if it was, this employee, it was several offenses. They did make, the article did explain that sometimes it's maybe a client has complained about someone's behavior, so the firm has fired the person, but maybe it was for showing up late, inappropriate things on your screen, all of those type of things. I was kind of surprised though that 25% of bosses said they've had to fire someone for Zoom etiquette, because I thought everyone's being so much more relaxed and chill, but I guess there are still things that are probably unforgivable.
That's what I was talking to you.
And even though we've all leaned into being relaxed, it's a reminder that it still is a professional environment.
And
right?
where's the line, right? Like relaxed, it is not equal to just
Yeah. Well, the other thing too I mentioned was that a lot of bosses really don't trust their employees working from home. That was in this survey as well too. Which again, it's something when we first started working together and starting C+P, we bought into, because we work in our homes, but we also come together to work too.
Like this,
So we were already working virtually part-time as an agency. But one of the terms, and I always say it wrong, flexibly committed, where it's the whole idea of you do what you need to do, but you know what you need to get done. I don't care if you do it at 9 o'clock at night. I don't care if you do it at 5 a.m. in the morning. Do you? That's right. That was our ethos. That was what we termed flexibly committed, wasn't it?
It really was. And I think, everybody wants in on that because it sounds like, it's inclusive, it's cool, it sounds like it's the best way to get people to work, but there's trust issues in the thing, right? Like it's hard to get someone who watches you through the clock to suddenly believe that you're doing something when you're out of sight.
Yeah, if you had to be there at 9 and leave at 6 or 5 or whatever, it's hard for that boss then who's grown up in that culture too to all of a sudden relax.
Switch,
The survey, those results did surprise me a little bit, but it does remind you that, again, even if you are at Zoom and you put on a shirt and you're wearing shorts or nothing below, you still got to show up and act somewhat professionally.
Oh God, don't let it be nothing.
Yeah. Well, we know there's the MP who did that twice.
Oh yeah, that's true.
What did he do? He changed once, and then did he take a pee?
Something. I was like, it's a bit much. Is he
Anyways,
still an MP? I don't know.
I think he is. He's a back MP. Yeah, Liberal MP.
This concerns me a tiny smidge.
So we talked about the Zoom there. Then we wanted to talk about an article that I sent you because I wanted your opinion on it. It was in The Cut.
Yeah.
New York Magazine's column, The Cut. It was about the rise and fall of the term girl boss, and you had some conflicted opinions about this term girl boss, which if you are a mover and shaker, female business person, entrepreneur, you've heard this term. I've heard this term.
Yeah, I certainly have a little bit of a difficult relationship with it. On the surface of it, anything that says girl, she, her, these things like bold her and she, they do such wonderful things, but just the name makes me cringe. I am not a fan. That said, here's my double standard, folks. Like, if someone bitches at girl boss, or they're like, oh, this is not cool, or this is hustle culture, my back goes up. I'm like, how dare you? I'm allowed to say I don't like it, but you're not allowed to have a comment. So I guess I'm not alone in this conflicted way of looking at it, because the fact is, girl boss, it was coined by the founder of Nasty Gal, which is and it had a lot of power, I think, especially for
it was I'm just as powerful as you, startup culture bros, like watch me girl boss my way to the top and hustle and everything. And
then embrace all of those emotionally intelligent things which you were made to feel, like don't be ambitious, like don't speak too loud, don't be too big for your boots. Like, it was the antithesis of all of those things, and I think it has power. I think it has particular power for women of color and for immigrants who are sort of taught, like, you come in here and you have to fight from day one, and you need to, like, prove yourself. So I can see the appeal of the thing. I can see a version 2.0 is probably necessary.
I think a more because the part that I didn't read the full article because it was a long article, but it was setting it up that several of these self-proclaimed girl bosses, the movers and shakers, who also had huge social media followings, like their face was the brand. We all wanted to be these people. And
you make it look easy, right?
But then stuff was coming out that they, just like probably their male, Silicon Valley counterparts, they were like, you can't keep up, you're fired.
Yeah.
I have no time for you, no nonsense for you. If you can't hustle like me, you're out. So there was these toxic work environment claims that came out. So that was kind of, they're saying this negative thing was being applied to it. But it's kind of, what you're saying totally makes sense, right? It's like,
there's something that it stands for, and I think we need to redefine what it is. And the fact remains, it's only the very few privileged who can say, I don't see gender. If you are a woman who's saying that that's not a problem, it's probably because you've managed to reach the rarefied air where that's okay. I think this discussion will continue. Take a read of this piece. It's in The Cut, and it is paywalled, but I guess
you get a few free articles a month. Yeah. So we both were able to read it for free. We're not subscribers.
So that's the next one there. And finally, in the last story of the week, this is a feel-good story, and I was excited to read about this a little bit. It's basically we're in the lead up to New York Fashion Week that's coming up, and there's a lot of stories around it. So this one caught my eye because it's about adaptive fashion and how it is that many designers are coming forward and starting to embrace adaptive fashion. And so I thought that was a really cool story. It had some interesting stuff, like, I can't seem to find it on the thing here, but some interesting stuff like masks are being put on, full body suits of people in wheelchairs, which make like a statement.
Inclusivity goes beyond just.
That's it.
Yeah, that's very cool.
The fashion brands tend to, like, I think, go to the side of like visible minority, like race, where you're like, okay, here we have an appropriate number of people of different cultures, and I think they've got some of that. So I'm really excited to see some of this intersectionality that goes into physical ability and other forms.
Do you want to know something? Speaking, you mentioned Fashion Week, so you might have seen this. We didn't talk about this before. Just a quick little mention because it made me laugh. Dolce & Gabbana for Milan Fashion Week put on a beautiful outdoor show, like gorgeous over-the-top outfits, very elegant. Somewhere in Italy, Milan maybe it's Milan Fashion Week. And as the beautiful models are walking down and people are filming, you're seeing their footage filming from the seats. And, it's the Anna Wintours, it's all the fashion people in their beautiful outfits. It starts to hail.
Right.
And everyone in the stands is going, ow, 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 ow. And you see people fleeing and running, but the models just kept going through the hail, hitting their faces. And I'm like, that is professionalism to a T there, folks.
That's training, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing training.
Yeah.
So that's it, folks. That's our roundup of the stories that caught our eye at the intersection of marketing and entertainment
news, just silly stuff to talk about,
Try a really dirty chai latte.
Really dirty chai.
I might post some ingredients for you down in the...
It's really good.
It's really good. All right. Bye.
Bye, LinkedIn Live.